This Guy's Garage. Like and subscribe.
With regards to the disinformation campaign that the RRM detected concerning MP Chong that involved a coordinated network of WeChat news accounts, including Beijing state media outlets and accounts, that took place between May 4th and May 13th, 2023. RRM detected it in June, and MP Chong was briefed about it, and it was made public on August 9th of 2023. So that's 2 months after this information was detected and 3 months after it took place. For a rapid response mechanism, that doesn't sound like a very rapid response, I would submit respectfully. So can you explain why it took 3 months before this disinformation campaign was made known to MP Chong and made public to Canadians?
Thank you for the question. So, Madam Chair, in answering that question, so as I noted, we were actually instructed as part of SITE to monitor the by-elections. So RRM Canada doesn't monitor the information environment on an ongoing basis. We were instructed as part of the by-elections specifically to look for foreign interference. So again, that was taking place in June, in advance of the by-elections. So we weren't monitoring the space in May. But when you actually put the tools in place, what you do is you actually put certain keywords. In this case, it was seeking member of parliament in Canada. And so when we do that and we start bringing in the information, while we were looking for the by-elections, it actually did have other information come up. So in terms of timing, while the activity took place from a very specific time, May 4th to 13th, we did not actually start to see it until June.
Now, I appreciate that, and that partially answers my question as to why you didn't see it in May, but it doesn't answer the second part of my question, which is why did it take, in this case, 2 months before MP Chong became aware of this, was briefed about it, and it was made public to Canadians?
So once it was identified in June, then we actually, again, our primary focus was the by-elections. So once those were completed, we were actually able to focus our energies on actually trying to understand the activity. And because WeChat is not an open platform, it does not proactively share information as some other platforms do. It actually is a very time-consuming activity to really look into the breadth of it. So that means looking at the different accounts. So in terms of timeline, just to answer the question, it took approximately the month of July to do that work, to do the research, because you have to really understand the network and scope it out. Once that was completed in July, that's also when we were sharing it through the intelligence community and different security organizations. And so by the end of July and start of August was when we were able to brief up and then organize the call with Mr. Chong on August 9th when he was available.
Thank you for that. But again, the by-elections were in mid-June. That means that it really was about 2 months, which again, to my point, is hardly a rapid response. In order to counter disinformation, particularly in the context of elections, it's important that that information be shared as close to real time as possible. Would you concur with that?
Well, actually, our objective isn't to counter disinformation. Our objective is to understand the information environment and the tactics that are being used, and then to shed light on those tactics and amplify and
certainly
understand.
Part of your mandate is to make that information known, is it not?
Yes, it is, which we did do in August.
It is, and if it takes 2 months to detect and make public disinformation, as was the case in this instance, then how can Canadians have any confidence in the RRM in the context of an election or in the lead-up to the issuance of a writ?
Well, I think actually this was an illustration actually of an ability for the RRM to bring information forward, to do the thorough research that's required to understand the tactics at play, and then to share them with Canadians and to make the MP aware. So I understand that some of the nuancing of needing to make sure that any research is done is thorough, because you actually want to make sure that what you're putting in public has been thoroughly researched. So in our perspective, it was actually a positive story that the RRM was able to map it, was able to bring that forward, was able to bring put it in the Canadian public, and also talk to the parent company of WeChat.
On a follow-up to one of your response to Mr. Cooper's question, you said that no action was taken and you waited until the by-elections were over. If the purpose is to interdict activities that are going to change the outcome of an election, why would the policy be, or the protocol be, to wait until the election is over before advising anybody? Is it because Michael Chong wasn't directly involved in the by-election process, or I'm confused about the priority?
So just to clarify, the activity itself, the information campaign, was in no way related to the by-election. Okay, so we were mandated to look at the by-election and to find if there was any indications of foreign interference, which we did not find any. However, in the information environment, as we were looking at the by-election, is when we actually discovered this campaign that had already been completed. It was time-bound between May 4th and May 13th. But of course, in the information environment, you can still find information post facto. So we did find it at that time, but it was not related to the by-election at all. So at that point, our objective was to understand that tactic, to understand the environment, and to make that public if we could.
Mr. Cooper, 5 minutes through the chair.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Chair. Through you, Madam Chair, Ms. Denham, you stated in an answer to my question in the previous round that part of a mandate of RRM is to make disinformation public so that Canadians know about it, so that individuals who are targeted know about it. And consistent with that, MP Chong was briefed and a statement was issued by Global Affairs Canada on August 9th. That's a good thing. However, on October 18th, 2021, the Rapid Response Mechanism prepared a report that also identified disinformation campaign through Beijing-based state media accounts targeting former Member of Parliament Kenny Chiu, Aaron O'Toole, and the Conservative Party, among others. That was not made public. So why was the disinformation with respect to MP Chong made public? A good thing, but Canadians were kept in the dark with regards to the October 18th, 2021 RRM report.
So the October 18th, again, that was during the writ period, and as a site member, we did report that up to the panel as part of the task force. But in that report, which you've read or have with you, it was very clear that we were notifying that there's particular activity that we had seen, but at that time, we were unable to determine direct linkages between the CCP and the rest of the network that we were identifying. So what we were flagging was that there was, what we could see was disinformation, that there were some coordination of accounts, but we were unable to make that determination at the time. And so that's what we reported up to the panel.
You reported it to the panel, but that would have been provided to the panel in September during the election. The writ was, or the election date was September 20th of 21. The report prepared was on October 18th, 2021, so that was after the election. In other words, RRM would not need to go through the election panel because the election was over, and that the report of October 18th does make clear, although it wasn't you weren't able to completely verify it.
Yeah.
It's unequivocal that CCP state media accounts were spreading disinformation against MP Chiu, Aaron O'Toole, and the Conservative Party. So again, Why was that not made public? There was no election concerning MP Chong when that was made public. But here we have this report after the election. So I really don't see the distinction.
Yeah, so just to clarify, so there were the CCP-related news sites that were included in that report, and there are many news sites that at times have disinformation on them, but we were not able at that time, and I believe the wording is we were unable to determine coordination with the CCP and the news sites. So again, we're looking for foreign information manipulation, and we are always looking to see if there's strong enough indications of a link to a government entity. At that time, we were not able to fully assess the network. So when you then look at disinformation, and disinformation can be on certain platforms, that's where I come back to, I think, an important point, which is when there is disinformation, another avenue is to raise that to the awareness of social media platforms and ask them for content moderation. But again, at that time, we didn't have sufficient information to report.
Well, the report does refer to Chinese Communist Party media accounts on Douyin have published videos that repeat Global Times headline published on September 8th that suggest the CPC's platform would lead China to break off relations with Canada. It refers to a Douyin account involving another CCP media outlet. So very clearly the report does establish that that disinformation was being shared by CCP-controlled media accounts in the same way that the August 9th statement makes clear that with respect to MP Chong, 1/3 of the accounts in which the disinformation was shared was on state media accounts. So again, I'm not following how it's possible, in light of that there was a distinction made between August 9th versus back in October 18, 2021. I would put it to you, what changed is this interference on the part of Beijing became public because of whistleblowers and because of media reports putting pressure on the government to be more transparent, not sufficiently transparent, but more transparent than the previous approach, which was to cover this interference activity up.
Am I able to respond, Chair? So there is a distinction between the two. So you're correct, of course, in the report it does indicate the state media news sites that had the content on them. When we're looking for disinformation campaigns, you would have what you would typically see, or what we've seen, it could start with a news site which may have affiliations with the government. In that case it was. But then what you're watching for is how is that interacting with other accounts? And is there coordination, for example, of timing and content? And that's when you're starting, which I've spoken to this committee about before, which is where we're looking for that artificial amplification of content to try and make it sound louder and try and make it sound like a more natural conversation. At that time, yes, we were able to see certain accounts, news sites that are state affiliated, but we could not see a corollary with other accounts that were retweeting or sorry, not retweeting, that's the wrong platform, that were putting up similar content. We couldn't find that linkage. So what I'm trying to clarify is, yes, at times you can see state-affiliated news sites that have information on them, but if they're not linked and trying to amplify a coordinated attempt to have inauthentic amplification, that's what we were not able to make the link. That was very different in the more recent situation.